Thanks, Lima Charlie, for having me. My name is John Tuckner, and I'm going to be talking about extended threat, how your browsers betray you, and it's a little bit about browser extensions. So thanks for coming out here. Let's get into it. About me, I'm from Kansas City. Did anybody make their way in from Baltimore today? Hopefully not. The Royals just beat the Orioles in the playoffs, so I don't have to buy anybody a beer, thankfully, as like a mea culpa. I have a deep interest in helping security teams of all shapes and sizes. I've done security engineering, I've done security automation, SIM, detection engineering, all sorts of things in my past. And now I'm kind of evolving to the next chapter where I'm going to be launching a new tool to help teams secure browser extensions. So I'm really excited about that. Thank you for being here with me on that. But before I kind of get into it, why do browser extensions matter? Most of the work most of the work that happens today is within a browser. Happens outside of the traditional security boundaries that we all know. Even with some people going back to the office, those offices don't function like they used to. What used to be like an Ethernet port, firewalls, IDS, now is just a Wi-Fi point with Okta and an EDR. Often there's a blind trust that comes with a lot of these EDRs. We say, once we install the EDR, that will have full visibility into everything. But those EDRs typically do have a little bit of a lag period, or they can't account for everything that happens. I don't know about you guys, but I've been seeing info stealers on the rise everywhere. These don't look like traditional malware. They don't really execute anything on your device. In the traditional aspects, they're not trying to implant something, they're not trying to add something to the registry. They're just trying to get data outside of your security premises. And along with that, with identity becoming the primary authentication control, no longer are you blocking IPs and domains and things. These info stealers have the ability to bypass a lot of your advanced security controls like passkeys, 2FA. As long as they can get that session, they can now present themselves as you. Not to jump ahead too far, but if you're coming into this and not knowing what a browser extension is, it extends the capabilities of your browsers and adds new capabilities to web pages. So you might know them as the little circle at the top right of many of browsers. Those things are just small little JavaScript programs with access to information from the browser. They can access some APIs that the browser makes available and basically the content on the web page. What's really nice about them, I think, is that they update automatically. So when new functionality is introduced or a bug is found, that developer can go in, patch, and basically update everybody's browser extension very quickly and very easily. Generally, these browser extensions are available in stores maintained by trusted organizations like Google, Microsoft, Mozilla, but you can also sideload them in. So if you create your own custom extension, you can just load that in, and the browser will gain that new functionality without having to publish it to a store. But what will go wrong with browser extensions? Extensions are maintained by many different types of developers. It's really hard to understand, is this extension even maintained by Google or by Microsoft? Google basically just says this is a Google published extension, and that's about it. So they don't even give you some knowledge about, is this a Microsoft extension, or is this from a company that actually purports to be looking into the data that they're trying to access. There's no notifications when updates occur, which makes it really hard for organizations to know, okay, what level or what version of an extension do I have in my organization, or how do I even pull what the list of extensions are that my users are using? And there's little transparency into how extensions actually work. So I don't know if any of you have actually looked deeply into one, but it's really hard to download. The extensions come one click from these app stores, and it's pretty much invisible to a user. To actually find those, you'll have to go dig into a user's file system, extract all the files, And then you're basically looking at packed, obfuscated JavaScript, which I don't think a lot of people in this room even would know how to like get deeply into the weeds on. And lastly, the extension stores are ran for consumers and not enterprises. So as a company, they don't really care too much about you, and this can really lead to lax and weird trade-offs where this consumer platform, they want more extensions and more capabilities to be available to everybody, while, and that hurts the moderation. So there's a chance that a extension being available and making the number of extensions available in the App Store goes up is in competition with, is this extension actually worthwhile and valuable to a company, or does it pose an inherent risk? And just so you know, I'm not telling lies. I just pulled out 3 articles that I've seen. One goes back as far as 2014. Browser extensions have been around for a while. I don't think anybody's really been talking about it very deeply. There's a couple community projects which I'll get into. But even so far as back 2014 and the install levels back then, Chrome extensions were being sold to other companies. The developer takes over that code, can push out new code. North Korea, over the past couple of months, has started to take this up as a technique that they use. They've been packing their own Chrome extensions, giving somebody a link to a GitHub. That person downloads the extension, installs it somehow, and then they're able to compromise those accounts that they've been targeting. So it's not just from the app stores, but it's extensions in general that are getting into browsers and causing a big issue. And these campaigns go on for a long time hidden because nobody's really looking deeply into the App Store, understanding all the trends. There's a lot of really interesting metadata across publishers and across everything that exists, like URLs, that nobody has access to from a broad perspective. So let me get into a couple permissions that go into browser extensions. I'm going to highlight 4 here, and then I'm going to get into like a little demo how you can see them in use. So we have tabs, cookies, web navigation, web request. I have up here the defined use purpose of these permissions from Chrome. So for instance, tabs. Use the tabs API to interact with the browser's tab system. You can use this API to create, modify, and manage tabs in the browser. What that means to me is like I can create a new tab, or I can close a tab, or I can move a tab around in the window, right? Okay, what this actually allows you to do is take screenshots of the active tab that a user's working in right now. I wouldn't necessarily know that right off the bat when I'm looking at the documentation described by Chrome. Cookies, I think you know where I'm going with this, but every time that you log into a website, you're given a session cookie. The cookies permission allows you to query and read these cookies, and you can read them on update. So every time that a cookie gets updated with a new value, your extension can have access to that. Web navigation allows the extension to read what sites and what URLs that the user is going to. So say you have a VPN or an internal service that is usually blocked off from any internet accessibility. Well, that behavior is happening in the browser, and if you have an extension, it's a really nice source of recon to know what sites that might be available or might be able to be visited by a user or in use by that organization. And lastly, you have the web request API. So this is exactly how you think, what you think would happen. The web request API can modify, block, or intercept requests that are in flight. Now, this is probably the scariest one to think about at face value, but I think this is the most prevalent or most useful API that many extensions will request because of their utility. Many of you might know uBlock Origin. It's an ad blocker. It needs this API to block any ads or any weird websites before actually serving you the content. So there's a lot of great utility in all these permissions, And basically all that a user gets is a screen that looks like this. So it's not the permissions as they're laid out in the configuration, but it just says, can read and change all your data on all websites. I think Ghostery is a really great application. I use it all the time. This is the only permission that it requests. I don't necessarily know the severity of this. I know I get this screen pop up every time that I install a new extension. I just click add extension anyways because I know it's the functionality that I want. So there's a lot of like really deep access that I'm giving by doing this. And I know this extension will help me because it's reputable. I've seen everybody in the industry using it. But I have to kind of balance the risk, right? All right, so with that, I'm going to get into a quick demo. What I have here is a web server, and that is listening. You can imagine this, any web server out on the internet. I have it local to my laptop right now, but this is just a web server that's waiting to collect information from a browser extension. So I'm going to run my web server. And then, let's see. All right. I'm going to go activate my extension that's malicious. All right, it's already on. Perfect. I'll go to GitHub. I'm going to log out. And I'm going to come back and sign in. I have passkeys, top tier security, enterprise grade. All right, my session is in. So what I have going on in the extension now, or in the server that I'm listening at, I'm collecting screenshots of everywhere that I'm going in the tab. And so you can kind of see me walk through this authentication scheme even. And every 10 seconds, I'm getting a new screenshot of my active tab. Over here, I'm also gathering cookies that are in use by my browser. So, and you can see that it updates pretty frequently. So I'm going to copy all these cookies. Let me go over here. I'm going to start a new window, so no tricks here. Go to GitHub. And then I have another extension. The theme here is extensions, where I can replace all of my cookies for this browser and utilize them in a new window. If anybody ever used Firebug way back in the way, this is kind of the same thing. So now that I have all my cookies set, I'm going to refresh. Now I'm me again, right? So not only am I just taking a screenshot of everywhere that I'm going, I'm also capturing all the cookies that I've been logging into these sessions. So if I need to know exactly where I need to go after I actually get authentication credentials, I now have the screenshots to tell me where the goods are, right? And so I can start getting into repositories and all of that. That might be really of value. Pretty cool, yeah? All right, so if you know anything about extensions already, you might have heard about Manifest v3, which is a big migration project that Google's putting on. I believe it got started in 2018 as a way to restrict permissions that browser extensions use, clean up a lot of legacy things, try and migrate everybody over. You might know about it because one of the most popular browser extensions, uBlock Origin, is ceasing to do further development because of the security measures imposed by Manifest v3. The funny thing about Manifest v3 is it's not necessarily a security thing. It's much more of a consumer producer type update. So there's a couple main things that Manifest v3 is doing. It's going to move the background services to service workers. So traditionally, extensions can just run in the background, all willy-nilly, gather a bunch of information. Now you have something called defined as service workers. There's the removal of a blocking web request API. So instead of blocking, or how uBlock Origin works is it'll intercept every web request and say, is this a good website or not, before making a determination on if I should allow the user to actually visit it. There's no longer a blocking web request API, so all of the web requests are still sent with no modification, but the tool, the extension, can glean information from the resources that the user is visiting. And actually, really importantly, Manifest v3 disallows the loading of remotely hosted JavaScript, which is absolutely bonkers to me. I think it's nice that websites and servers that you host can pull in remotely hosted JavaScript. I think we've seen a number of attacks that result from that as well when the remotely hosted JavaScript gets changed. But these are supposed to be trusted resources. When you install an extension, you are pulling in things that you don't already know exist already, and then added on top of that, in Manifest version 2, those extensions could pull in entirely new apps into your extension as well. So something to watch out for. But Manifest v3 is not a solution to risky browser extensions. The demo that I just showed you was entirely Manifest v3, right? So if anybody comes to you and says, oh, extensions are moving to Manifest v3, Chrome's taking a serious look about browser extension security, well, maybe you didn't find the demo actually like too compelling, but it really spooks me. All right, so what can you do from an organizational perspective to manage browser extensions? To sum it up really briefly, you have 3 strategies. You have allow all, probably because your company isn't thinking about browser extensions to begin with. You have block all, which is a great security strategy, as we all know, very productive. Now, I get like there's a lot of organizations that will block everything, keep a small allow list. You probably have like great, like the highest level of regulations, and it comes with like a total, I totally get it. But where I think a lot of companies would like to get to is the block and approve. So within a lot of the browser extension management suites like Chrome Enterprise, they allow you to request a new extension, and that goes to your security team for approval. But that workflow is really is kind of flaky. And then you can also manage browser extensions with SCCM on Windows, but you have to generate this XML file with a list of extensions. And even then, how do you even know what extensions are good and which extensions are bad, right? So if you're just looking at the extension window and it's telling you a great story about what it does, there's no enrichment, there's no added knowledge about what is this extension actually doing under the covers, except for maybe user reviews, right? The extension code isn't actually very available either, so even if you knew what to analyze, you couldn't download it, unpack it, really get into it without installing it for the first time. And even then, you have to go fishing for like files on Windows or Mac and start understanding that packed JavaScript, as I kind of mentioned earlier. Chrome Enterprise provides 2 enrichment sources built in. So if you're actually managing these from an organizational perspective, they will give you 2 pieces of info. One of them is from CR Excavator, which is an old Duo security project that was acquired by Cisco. Very well known in the community, was free, was a great tool, but recently has just kind of ceased working a little bit as well. And then we have spin.ai, which is a SaaS security tool, which primarily focuses on SSPM, DSPM, ransomware detection, and backup and recovery. So these are like the 2 enrichment sources that Chrome provides. If you've never seen it before, this is what the page looks like provided by Google. Now, there is still a lot of really great information here, but I don't know about you, but I've never really found a use in providing a score to an admin about what a tool is a tool malicious or not. We can joke about like virus total, number of detections all day. Those are engines that isn't necessarily like a good or bad, but here we have uBlock origin, again, one of probably my #1 extension recommendations, and we have a score of 524 and 50 from spin. I don't really know what those scores are out of. I know red means bad, spin says yellow, unsure. I don't know if that really gives me a ton to work off of, right? I can see it's not developed by Google. The manifest version is 2, which I know is bad. But there's a ton of active users and reviews are great. So I don't know, maybe I'll give it a go. So anyways, what I'm doing here, what I really am pleased to announce, so I'm going to be launching a tool called Secure Annex for everybody to use. It is going to be like an AI-powered code analysis, behavior analysis tool, along with giving you all the context needed to actually evaluate these extensions deeply. So you'll be able to see enrichment of the URLs, understand review sentiment over time. So if a extension gets updated, the reviews tank, an owner changes, we'll be able to understand that and give you a notification. We'll help you with the extension approval and allow listing. So we'll create the XML, SCCM files so you can push that out to your organization, along with some tools for threat hunting and digging in deeply to extensions as you would like to. So get back into another demo, show you the tool a little bit. Maybe some people in here were affected by the CrowdStrike problem. Maybe your user says the day after, oh, CrowdStrike doesn't work. I'll just go install my own antivirus. Like, that's great. I'll just go to this one. This is accessible in the library right now. Does everything that I think an antivirus should. And there's a lot of really great reviews. Best malware antivirus. This antivirus malware works fine for me. And then a bunch of reviews saying total scam. Well, I really don't know. So we're going to go into Secure Annex. We're going to look up online antivirus protection. We're going to see a lot of the same information, but we're also going to throw the extension and code into AI to give it an analysis and a overview of all the code. One thing that AI is really great at is code understanding. It's being trained on that day in, day out. And so throwing JavaScript at it really isn't anything new for it to handle. It does really well with obfuscation, not like perfect, but it does pick up some of the trends and behaviors that an engineer might not, or an analyst might not be able to discern without a ton of work. And it will be able to say, based on based on a bunch of different contexts, this is what I think the extension is trying to carry out, which would probably take a lot of people hours and hours to dig through URLs and look for vulnerabilities in the extension and see if there's any Yara matches. Open up the manifest, be able to dig in, and even have the expertise to know what they're looking at, right? So my hope is to take that off everybody's plate. We're grabbing the reviews, we're grabbing the URLs, and then at the bottom, we'll also have a code review. Like I mentioned with info stealers, they're just kind of everywhere and they're a little bit more innocuous. So what this online antivirus protection extension does is it will reset your search provider to a custom search engine. And then every time that user types in a new search, you're actually sending it to suggest.chromeapps.site. And if there's a specific URL, it'll send you to Norton Antivirus instead for some reason. All right, so this one's definitely kind of weird. It doesn't actually like do anything antivirus. You'll see all the URLs here mentioned as well. But it doesn't stop here either. So if I want to look at like who's actually publishing this, I can click on this user, the extension owner's email, and now I have an enrichment page of the other extensions that this person is publishing. And there's over 30,000 users using this person's tools, and they all utilize about the same thing, right? So if I go into this audio recorder, look at that. It's using chromeapps.site too. So it's a very shared domain by both of these extensions. If I actually go to this website, homegreen.com, buy a planter instead of an air purifier. I mean, this is a great message, but like, I don't think that this has anything to do with antivirus protection or audio recording or anything like that. So what do I actually do with this? And then if I want to see, where chromeapps.site is used across all other extensions, I'm going to go back to the Investigate tab, look up URLs, domain. These are all the other extensions that are utilizing chromeapps.site. You can see exactly the files that are utilizing them and where they end up being. So we have prawn blocker, we have torrent search, analytics. There's a lot of great information here. And I think my hope is to have this be a really awesome tool for a security analyst to jump in and get a good understanding of what's happening in their Chrome extensions. So just to sum it up, I think Chrome extensions are pretty spooky and provide a significant threat and risk to a lot of organizations. Everybody that I've kind of talked to, they don't really think about this, or this isn't a top priority of their security programs. I get it. But the activity is picking up related to these, and people need the knowledge and the tools to be able to combat this risk effectively. So what I'm kind of banking on is that a proactive analysis of these tools, of these extensions, is what's going to actually make the difference. There's a lot of tools out there that will understand what a user is actually doing in the browser, categorizing that activity, and letting admins know if that's good or bad. To me, that's a little bit too late, right? You would rather know ahead of time that these browser extensions are actually in your organization and doing bad things. Why wait until something actually occurs? All right, so that's me. That's Secure Annex is the name of the tool that I'm launching. And if you want to get in touch or talk more, but also open for any questions while I'm up here. Yep. Yeah, so you can go to the website, log in right now. It's a little secretive right now. So low-key, you all are some of the first to know. Feel free to log in, give me some feedback. It's just Google Auth right now. It's in its very early stages, so bear with me, but I'm getting a lot of use out of it, and I hope you all will too.
Thank you for your talk. Maybe I misunderstood, but if the manifest v3 is preventing extensions from blocking access to URLs, then what do like the regular home user, because the whole problem with this is that there are extensions out there that anyone can download. So enterprises have defenses against bad extensions and firewalls and WAFs stuff in place. But what about for the average home user? If they can't get an extension they can get for free and easily to block bad suspicious sites, what is Google saying that manifest v3 will enable to protect them?
Manifest v3, the primary introduction of security is disallowing the blocking of web requests. And interception, direct proxying of web requests. So what could have happened, or what does happen for uBlock Origin, is it detects what site somebody is going to, probably in the background because it's all advertising based or very obscured from the user. What uBlock Origin does is it says, okay, I'm not going to allow that request anymore. That permission's gone now. So all of the web requests have to go through, and there's other workarounds for this, but the way that uBlock Origin was implementing it, that was a major blocker to them. So that's why they're no longer like ceasing expansion on that, but it still allows extensions and people access to know like where a user is going. If somebody submits form data to a website, it can intercept the form data. All those requests go through, but all the data can also be looked at and understood by the browser extension and then pushed off somewhere else like I did in my demo. It seems like the uBlock Origin or like uBlock Lite is going down a path that they can block some requests, but I'm not entirely sure of how they're going about doing that. So,
yeah, hi. I wish I had this like 5 or 6 years ago. It would have been awesome investigating some earlier DPRK stuff. But have you had a chance to do any kind of analysis? Like, are you seeing any kind of malicious extensions as a service kind of things being offered by criminals, like kind of any trends that are coming out as a result of what you've been able to gather so far?
just the thing that's just jumped out to me is the amount of innocuous or seemingly normal applications that people might, or that get published to the store. There's a couple categories that stand out to me. You obviously have crypto wallets. Those are probably like low-hanging fruit. But the number of like Roblox and free Fortnite skins and antivirus and VPN and the list kind of goes on, those are the things that these types of behaviors are just kind of laying low in. And it's really hard to understand unless you get super deep and honestly like unpack a lot of the JavaScript to know whether it's actually bad or not. And what the scenario that always plays out through my head is you have somebody in finance and they're logging into the financial reports day in, day out, Snowflake, things like that. Their kids get home from school, they just want them to like have their time, and so their kid goes and installs however many extensions on for free Roblox coins. The next day when they log in, those extensions are active and totally available. So I just think that's really interesting that, and you know, it's not just kids, but like the allure of a free proxy or a VPN is pretty juicy for a lot of people.
Gotcha, thanks.
Hi. I think I want to add something to this, and then I have a tiny small question at the end. So as I am very scared of browser extensions, I got to say. So when I heard from you that you were doing something about that, I was very, very happy that someone is finally doing something about that. I know that I got owned once recently by a browser extension as a very security conscious person. And when you walked us through kind of the review process that you can do as, like, imagine one of your users, or you're in a security team and one of the employees comes and says, hey, I want to install this thing, right? What are your options right now to do that? It was basically the same thing that I walked through when I decided if I wanted to, and I'm just gonna, it's gonna be a little, no, it's not weird, but it's a little, I'm just going to say it. I installed a color picker extension into my Chrome, right? Because I was too lazy to take a screenshot, put it in Photoshop, and then use the color picker. I was like, there must be an extension. But when the pop-up comes and says, hey, this thing can read everything on everything and do whatever it wants with it, I paused for a second and was like, okay, let's look at that before I install it, right? And it had all the marks that gave me some trust of, like, it had a ton of users. It looked okay. Like, I just scanned over it and was like, probably fine. Installed it, got my color picked, and I think within 15 minutes I noticed that, like, oh, well, all of my links are now going through some sort of tracking redirect, which is very interesting, right? So I'm glad, because what I couldn't do, and I think this is what this is attempting to solve, is I did not spend the time to look at the code, right? There's going to be obfuscation. Where do I even get it? I'm not that good at JavaScript. So the attempt of looking at this and giving me a summary, and an AI looked at it, and I know that that's one of the things an AI is really good at. That's something I'm super excited about, because this is what you just walked us through. That happened to me as a somewhat security conscious person. So my question would be, if I wanted to describe this to someone in like one sentence, would you say this is like a virus total for browser extensions, maybe?
Yeah, that would be the hope, and that's what we'll hopefully get to. I don't want to speak for virus total or anything like that, but I think this is where AI is going to be applied to do a lot of good. This isn't an AI tool per se, but a lot of the analysis is presented and immediately on demand, available through AI. And then if you need to look deeper, if you want to question it, you can actually perform that. But the ability to look that, or like to know where to look initially, I think is going to be really huge for people. So there's a lot of different paths that I can take this tool. It's very early, and yeah, just really excited to see where it goes. Thanks for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, and one other thing I wanted to add on to that is, you can get into the code, but it would be like understanding your software supply chain dependencies as well. So you're not going to dig into every dependency that your software is using to be able, like we've seen enough supply chain attacks and how hard those are to combat. These problems are laying hidden for a while, and all you can do is hopefully like shine a light on them.
Thank you for the talk. You spelled out the probability of the normal extension turning malicious by buying that, by selling this. So what is is it really happening, and how this tool can add some continuity to watching the extensions and catching that case?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely happening. It will happen in probably the most silent way possible. If you sell an extension, you don't actually have to provide notice to anybody, or nobody gets notified of that the ownership's changing. Somebody could compromise an account, or the ownership could change, or an access could be granted to an account, and nobody would necessarily know. There's some code signing underneath a lot of the covers, but once you get an extension actually published, you don't necessarily need the code signing certificate in every further push or update that you have to the application. And then there is this element of pushing out new code. And so if you want to request new permissions for the user has to accept those new permissions if they aren't already declared. So that can be tricky, but I think a lot of the targets that somebody looking to compromise an extension or be able to buy one, they'll go after extensions that already request the right permissions, so that the update is pretty silent to a user. Something that I'm going to be doing is looking at the web store every day, or keep track of who the owner is, what the code changes are, are the reviews being updated, and then every revision, be able to say, okay, the code has changed from this to that over this time period. So I'm keeping a version history of all of the Chrome extensions as they exist, and I'll be able to say, okay, these are the deltas, and hopefully be able to open that up more to people as I go.
My question is, are you considering publishing threat intelligence data about different analysis that your services conduct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I'm going to be investing a ton of time into building the tool and adding more capabilities into it. And the analysis and threat intelligence and research is really just kind of AI, and then me having a signal to go look at one thing in particular or something else. And so the research will be just very targeted in the near term, but the tool is also available to use. So if anybody's interested in like digging a little bit deeper in Chrome extensions, and if something, if you go searching through the Chrome Web Store for Roblox and you want to know a little bit more about one specific extension, throw that in here. It'll start processing, give you at least that starting point.
Right.
And then I really hope that researchers kind of pick up and use this tool more.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Thanks for the questions, y'all.